Representative of Lebanon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like first to thank Mr. Sari for his comprehensive briefing, and allow me also to warmly welcome His Excellency Dr. Riyad al-Maliki, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Palestine. We are delighted that Dr. Maliki is here today, but we are even more delighted that the State of Palestine is for the first time here and here to stay as an expression of the international will to recognize Palestine's statehood. Indeed, it's a major leap in the uphill battle of the Palestinian people to exercise their inalienable national rights. However, we are not even halfway there. Palestine could only be granted an observer status by virtue of a General Assembly resolution. But like any other peace-loving state, it should be granted full membership in our organization. Therefore, we truly hope that sooner than later, this Council, based on Article 4 of the Charter, will recommend to the General Assembly the admission of Palestine as a full member to the United Nations. Most importantly, Palestine, the State of Palestine, remains occupied, and it's our duty, the duty of the international community, to help it put an end to occupation and to achieve real independence. Then and only then can we have a genuine and lasting peace in this part of the world. Mr. President, you and your 14 colleagues around this table all know that there is no greater obstacle towards such a noble end than the unrelenting Israeli policy of settlement in the occupied territories since 1967. Time and again, the question of the illegality of settlement activity was stressed in this Council. I see no need to demonstrate it anew. Yet, for whoever may still have any doubt on the matter, let me only recall that one of the first people, Mr. President, to recognize the illegality of such activity was no one else than Mr. Theodor Meron, a child survivor of the Holocaust, who became one of the world's most eminent international jurists and recently elected President of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Meron was legal counsel of the Israeli Foreign Ministry in September 1967. He was asked by the office of Mr. Levi Eshkol, then Prime Minister of Israel, for his opinion on the legality of civilian settlements in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights. In a cover note dated September 18, 1967, to the legal memorandum which he submitted on the matter, Meron summarized his conclusions as follows, and I quote, "Civilian settlement in the administered territories contravenes the explicit provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention." End of quote. In the text of his memorandum, the legal counsel of the Israeli Foreign Ministry is unequivocally clear that the Geneva Convention prohibition on the occupying power to deport or transfer parts of its civilian population into the territory it occupies is a prohibition which is, and I quote again, Mr. Meron, categorical and not conditional upon the motives for the transfer or its objectives. Its purpose is to prevent settlement in occupied territory of citizens of the occupying state. End of quote. No need to dwell then any longer on the legal aspect of settlements, I assume. Let me then turn to the political effects of settlements and how they prejudice the prospects for peace negotiations. To that effect, most telling is a quote from Amos Elon, the late Israeli journalist, essayist, and author, who was referred to in the New York Times obituaries as a cultural giant who was for many years Israel's, and I quote again, most renowned public intellectual. Stressing how detrimental to the prospects of peace the settlements could be, he wrote in November 21, 2002, essay in the New York Review of Books, and I quote, "Imagine the effect of the peace process in Northern Ireland if the British government continued moving thousands of Protestants from Scotland into Ulster and settling them at government expense on land confiscated from Irish Catholics. End of quote. Mr. President, to help assess the magnitude of the ongoing settlement activity, let me underline here that approval for settlement plans jumped 300% in 2012, and that in 1 week alone of December 2012, the Israeli government pushed forward plans for over 11,000 homes beyond the 1967 border, nearly as many settler homes as was approved in the previous 10 years combined, as clearly demonstrated by the Israeli Peace Now movement. A copy of the alarming report released by this movement on January 16, that's a week ago, detailing the record of Prime Minister Netanyahu's government on settlements of the course of its full term in office, that's from April 2009 to the present, can be found at peacenow.org. Yet, no less alarming than this unprecedented level of settlement activity is the strategic location of the recently approved construction plans. Here, the case of the E1 area is most indicative. According to the Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem, if built, the 3,426 housing units which were approved on December 5, 2012 in the E1 area will exacerbate the isolation of East Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank, will interrupt the territorial contiguity between the northern and southern parts of the West Bank, and will create a physical and functional barrier between East Jerusalem and the Palestinian population in adjacent West Bank communities for which the city serves as the main metropolitan and religious center. And I was quoting B'Tselem. For the Israeli NGO, Terrestrial Jerusalem, TJ, I quote, E1 is not a routine settlement. If built, it's a game changer, maybe a game ender. E1 is the binary settlement. If you support E1, you cannot possibly be in favor of the two-state solution. If you are in favor of the two-state solution, you must oppose E1. End of quote. For those who are brushing off criticism regarding E1 by insisting that Israel is not pursuing construction, just planning. Terrestrial Jerusalem, the NGO, is right to remind that, and I quote, when approved, that is when plans are approved, Israel asserts a plan is only planning, it's just planning now. When implemented, they'll tell, well, it's not new, it was planned a couple of years ago. By now, anyone hearing this refrain should immediately understand Israeli planning in settlements equals Israeli construction in settlement, sooner than later. Mr. President, you surely recall that on January 11, a group of 200 young Palestinians set up tents in part of the E1 area and announced the establishment of a village, dubbed Bab al-Shams, Gate of the Sun, after the novel of the internationally renowned Lebanese writer, Elias Khoury, considering that, and I quote, the time has come now to change the rule of the game, for us to establish facts on the ground, our own land, end of quote. Before their eviction, 2 days later, by the occupying forces, Khoury addressed them from Beirut in these words, I quote, when you build your wonderful village, you gave back meaning to meaning. You became the sons of this land and its masters. You are the olives of Palestine that shine under the sun of justice. And as you build your village, the light of freedom flares up with you. Light upon light, nurun ala nur. Mr. President, borrowing the words of my fellow countryman, I will conclude by saying that it is also high time for this council to give meaning to meaning by living up to its responsibilities under the Charter and putting an end by all legal means to the illegal settlement activity in the occupied territory. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Lebanon for his statement, and I suspend this meeting.